Mr. Williamson, we ready? Commissioners, you ready? All right, I'll call to order Town of Blythewood Planning Commission Town Council Special Call Meeting. Today's Monday, March 6th. We're in Doco Manor. The time is 6:03 p.m. All right, sir, can you call the roll of the Planning Commission, please?
There we go. Malcolm Gorge. Ed Kessler. Here. Erica Page. Here. Marcus Taylor. Ken Coleman. Jamal Mosley.
Here.
Bill Tomes.
Here.
All right. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll of Town Council.
Yes, sir. Eddie Baldwin.
Present.
Sloan Griffin. Brian Franklin.
I'm here.
Rich McKendrick. And I'm sorry, Donald Brock. Thank you.
All right. Was notification and posting of this agenda accomplished in accordance with state law?
Yes, sir, it was.
Thank you. Town council members, before you, we have the agenda. I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda or modify.
Motion, we accept the agenda as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. The agenda is adopted. Let's join Councilman McKendrick tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Okay, council members, we have minutes from January 3rd of 2023.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is the Planning Commission minutes.
Okay, I apologize. I'll turn it over to the chairman, Mr. Gorge, sir.
Okay, so taking a lead from Mr. Mayor, you've had the minutes in your packet. I hope you've all had a chance to peruse them. Are there any comments, adjustments? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved to be entered into the record. Thank you.
And for those at home, it's a presentation tonight, Ms. Kelly McCormick of Kenning Keast Collaborative for the kickoff of the rewrite of the town's land usage ordinance. Ms. McCormick, welcome.
Hello. I don't really need a mic.
No, you don't.
But is it going to record if I turn it off?
No, it will not record if you turn it off.
Yeah, you're fine. You're just
I'll leave it on. I'll just back up.
Thank you.
I can stand over here and it will probably hear me. I've never been accused of not talking loud enough. Welcome. Thank you all. It's great to see council and planning commission in the same room. It's a refreshing thing. Oftentimes, communities don't have the dynamic that you have to be able to meet together and share a table. So I think this is wonderful, and that is encouraging to me starting the project out with you. We had a great day today. I got here early at 8:30 with staff, and Mr. Williamson was very kind and took me on a tour of Blythewood and some surrounding areas, and we talked a lot about and you'll see some pictures of some things we saw today through a pollen-covered windshield. So you have that nice yellow blanket just like the rest of South Carolina does right now. But it was a great experience to see it through his eyes. I had driven around and done the same sort of tour myself when I was here for the interview for this work. And it was really interesting to see a few new things. I know you have some really exciting things on the horizon, some great big announcements that have come lately. And so this project could not come in a more timely manner. I'm going to go through some slides. If you were at my interview, you've seen some of this information, so forgive me for repeating, but I want to make sure that everybody starts out excited and on the same page. All right, here we go. Yes. So a little bit about myself. My name is Kelly McCormick. I am the Senior Associate in charge of the Greenville, South Carolina office of Kenning Keast Collaborative. We are a national planning consultancy based in Sugar Land, Texas. However, we have 5 regional offices, and again, I focus my practice in the Southeast. That gentleman there in the picture with me is Brett Keast. He's our owner, CEO, and also will be involved in our project. He's in the Houston area. So again, just want to tell you a little bit about us. We are a multidisciplinary team. We have urban designers, engineers, lawyer, architect, planners, but the bulk of our practice is made up of planners who have been in your shoes. We have sat in Carol's seat, in Kirk's seat, in your chairs on commissions and boards, and I have 17 years of South Carolina planning experience before I joined Kenda Keast. So with that being said, this is just a brief organizational chart that shares how this project will run. So obviously the town of Blythewood, foremost, is important to the project, the officials, the staff, and the residents. We wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for doing something for your residents. You wouldn't be serving in these positions if you didn't care about your community. You will direct, obviously, Carol and his staff, the town administrator, who will direct us. And Brett serves as principal in charge of the project. I will be the code drafter for the most part and writing your new annexation policy, so you'll see me mostly. And then Encode Plus is our publishing software, and I'll show you a little bit about that. That's how we will write and draft the code. So it'll be an interactive way for the public to engage with the code, for staff to give me comments and questions. It's cloud-based software, so we don't have to use email back and forth in a Word document and red pens. It's really neat and interactive. So I think that's one thing that the staff will really find useful. And once you get into seeing changes and edits and strike-throughs, you'll also appreciate that. Those are just some books that Brett wrote, along with Lane Kendig, our founder, about performance planning. And that's something that we really like to discuss early on in our projects, is how to accomplish goals of community character. Sometimes people think about zoning in little boxes, like you guys have a lot of them. There's a lot of colors on those maps and a lot of different shades of yellow and green, and how we can accomplish maybe some of those same goals with less of those colors, and that can be done through community character planning. A little bit about our company. We have, again, not had a lot of work on the East Coast until about 5 to 6 years ago. Again, I joined the company 3 years ago, but these are some of our current clients that we're working with right now on either codes or comprehensive plans. Our practice does focus on code writing, which is what we're doing for you, annexation policy drafting, and comprehensive planning. So the KKC office there in the upstate, and then those are some of our other clients. That's Harrisburg, North Carolina's website. Just wanted to kind of show you kind of what you're going to get soon. In a couple weeks, you're going to have an interface that you can send residents to and say, here's what's going on with the project. It'll link from Blythewood's homepage. It'll kind of be in a style that looks like your homepage, so people don't feel like they're going to some foreign thing. And it'll be really neat to keep up with the project that way. Encode Plus, again, it's a subsidiary also owned by Brett, our CEO, and that's how we do all of our ordinance drafting. It's not going to be that important to you at the outset because I'll be interacting a lot with staff in that module, but there'll be a ton of editing. It's how we make our tables. You're probably familiar right now if you need to go look at Blythewood zoning ordinance, you go to the website, you go to Muni Code, you sort through. Well, this is very similar to that, except it's very interactive with graphics and tables. This is what it looks like on the back end. So when I'm writing, I need to make a comment. I think this has a laser. Whoop. Maybe not.
May not.
Okay. So over here on the side, you can see where it says comments. That may be where I highlight something and make a comment, and I need to have Carol review it, or have y'all review it. I don't have to email you and say, I wrote a comment on line 32 of CA. It'll pop up and send him an email that says I asked a question of him about that particular thing. It's a really great way to keep everyone on the same page, and anyone that has access to this, and we'll go over that with staff, can log in and look at this in real time. And not everyone will have editing capabilities because we kind of reserve that. Like imagine if you all were able to go in and edit at the same time, it could be a mess. But Carol, Kirk will have editing capabilities or commenting capabilities, and they'll be able to send that to me. And then on the live version of the website, which I showed you, Harrisburg's version, once this software and parts of the code go live, the public can comment on it, and those comments will also filter to us. So we'll be able to see those. It's just a good way to keep track of everything. It logs everything, and then it gives you the ability to have a historical record of the project as well, a digital historical record. You're not married to this software. If once the project's over, Blythewood decides, well, we don't want to pay for this anymore. You just get all the data, host it however, send it to Municode. We're a partner with Municode, but you can also just have it as a Word document or a PDF. Don't want to scare you with all that technology first thing, but I think you will like it. So what are we doing here? Most of you probably know from being in your positions that we are looking at a new project for Blythewood to redo zoning ordinance, and that could mean new zoning map, as well as reviewing your development and subdivision regulations, which will be in alignment with zoning. Sometimes those two things are in conflict. And then also studying your annexation policy. But I want to make sure you understand we're keeping what's good and enhancing it. I was talking with the chair of the BZA today at lunch, and she said they had just a few cases in the last year or so. Well, that's a good thing. In a way, it shows that your ordinance isn't terribly broken, that you have variance after variance after variance every month, but that you have the ability to use your regulations and adapt them. But sometimes we find issues with the fact that that might mean that people aren't coming in and asking for the right permits, or neighborhoods are just doing things without coming in and getting those correct checks and balances that they should as taxpayers. So we want to make sure that we're taking a good code check in that regard. Also, looking at your annexation policy. So there's a lot of key properties, and we look at, we were driving around today, and I would say, was this in Blythewood? He's like, well, it should be. These people call themselves residents, and that's something that we're definitely going to study as a key strategic way to think about what properties you want to target. You don't have like a carrot that you can tie to a stick. Like, you can't have sewer if you don't annex into Blythewood. You can't have this, but there has to be a way for us to achieve some sort of annexation goal and make it attractive for people to come in. Whether it's through the services that you provide, the review that you provide is better than the county, faster than the county. There's got to be something that makes people want to come in and be a part of your community. This is a long slide with a lot of different things on it, but we're going to go through some of this. So what are we doing? Again, we are going to consider uncontrolled growth. I saw some of that today when we were in the field, and you may be familiar with some of what's going on. Some of it might be in the county, but that does affect you. Just because, like we were driving around today, I didn't necessarily know where the county line stopped and the town limits began. So we need to take a look at that. Also, traffic congestion. Coming in this morning, I was arriving at 8:15. Could not make a turn into this facility. Well, I was backing up traffic because I was waiting. I couldn't turn because the car that was going to Blythewood Road didn't leave a gap for me. They ignored the white line on the road, and they just kept on rolling over. They're probably a high school student. They might not have known they were supposed to let me in. Well, I decided not to keep backing up traffic because it had been about 3 minutes at that point, and I could see the cars were backing up into the road. So I just kept on going and figured out I turned around, I think, in the ophthalmology office down the street. But it was hard to get out there. So a nice person like waved me on, and I turned out into the road and I made my way in. But I feel like that is a lot of traffic in that area at that time of the morning. I was not expecting. I'm always early for everything in my life, but I was glad I was early because I was like, whoa, what if I can't get in, and panicked. And Carol was ready for me. He was in the car waiting on me. No, I'm just kidding. But that was important. And I can only imagine that it's worse at certain times of the day. You know, there's probably 3 school traffic times with the 3 different age groups going at different times of the day. In the afternoon, it's probably the opposite problem of people coming back in and backing up your roads. And you're going to see on some picture slides earlier that I took of ways that your ordinance is creating this problem. You have inadequate infrastructure in many places. And while we can't fix that necessarily monetarily, we can fix it with what we require and what new developers and commercial businesses are required to do when they come into your community to not exacerbate those existing problems. And that contributes to loss of character. We are going to talk about the community's vision. In a little while, at the very end of this, I'm going to do a mini visioning exercise with y'all. I'm going to do this with 8 different groups of people on Wednesday and Thursday from your community that Carol has set up for me. I gave them a list like this long of groups to ask and invite to these meetings, and they're going to hop on, and we're going to have a great discussion about an hour long each of 8 sessions to really understand what your stakeholders in your community, like real estate agents, developers, business owners, HOA presidents, what they think about what you think about. So we're going to have a mini visioning exercise in a minute, and I'm going to give you an update after those and let you know if they said what you said. We are character experts. I showed you 2 books that our company has written about this, and we want to make sure that we can accomplish the goals that you have as a vision for your community through regulation. It's not just the comp plan, which is a very important thing that you guys finished last year, but that sometimes can be a little bit theoretical and hard to put into practice. Well, zoning, subdivision regulations, and your annexation policy is the tool to implement that comprehensive plan. So we're going to review your annexation policy and strategically plan for new annexations. Again, without that carrot, it's a little more complicated, but we will get there. We'll focus on chapters 153 and 155. Again, that's zoning and subdivisions. We're going to revise those to make sure that you have what you want and desire for your community in place. I'm going to show you some slides in just a few minutes that show some things that I don't think you want, but your ordinance allows. And also revise the zoning chapter. We're going to review existing districts. Like I said a few minutes ago, you have like a lot. You have like 6 colors of yellow. That's too many. We can condense that to make it accomplish the same goals, character approach, without having that many districts for your staff of 2 here to administer. It's too much. We're going to look at housing needs. You have a lot of housing coming into your community. There's been subdivisions approved, and I know we talked a little bit earlier today about some of those subdivisions. Some are going to be in Richland County, and they're going to affect you. We're going to see some pictures also about that. Look at a couple of different development options. Right now, you have some cluster subdivisions that go in your conservation district, but I think they're maybe being misused and could be targeted a little bit more strategically. You could use those to accomplish some goals that you say that you want in your comp plan that you're not currently accomplishing through regulation, like meaningful open space, not just pine trees in the corner. You know what I mean? And then we're going to look at the town center district and maybe review and apply a new development concept, and that could help with some of that traffic as well. Okay. You also have this wonderful ULI technical assistance report, which is kind of theoretical like a comp plan. So we're going to see if we can incorporate some of those strategies into that as well. Just a little bit about approach. We want to be as simple as possible. I spoke with someone today about a 1,000-page zoning ordinance that my company wrote for Littleton, Colorado. You don't need that. That is a huge suburb of Denver with millions of people moving in that area daily. You know, you might feel like there's millions of people when you're waiting on traffic to get on Blythewood Road from Langford Road. However, that's not necessarily the case. We want to make sure that you have an ordinance that your staff can administer, that your citizens can abide by, and that your developers can feel comfortable coming to them with and wanting to annex and wanting to be part of the community. So we're looking to create flexibility in that regard. You know, the BZA may not see a lot of cases, and that's kind of a good thing. You don't want them super active. You want the staff to have some leniency and some discretionary abilities when you're talking about inches here or there that really don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things if they're not violating the building code. We want to create multiple paths to yes. So, you know, you've got this my way or the highway with Apple. If anybody has an iPhone, you know, if they're not approving it, you can't do it. Or Burger King, have it your way. There's got to be a balance in the middle of those 2 concepts of approach. And that will help us create value by streamlining procedures. You also want to incorporate best practices for responsible development. We saw some poor practices of responsible development today in the field, and developers, I used to work for one, they're not keen on spending money just to make things nicer. It might look wonderful right now, but if you go to some of the developments, and this is picking on residential, but it applies to commercial as well, in 15 or 20 years, they don't look the same way that they do when the developer is there running things and making things neat and tidy because they still have lots to sell. So you've got to ensure that you're getting a product, a style of development, roads that stand the test of time, that will maintain value in your community and not decrease in value and be a depreciating asset. And then remember that one size does not fit all. We will calibrate this based on staffing capabilities. Again, not just copying and pasting from another jurisdiction that we've worked in. We will use those experiences, but we will create something that is right-sized for Blythewood. Oh, and also, this is important that you are the decision makers here. We have to write something that is within your regulatory tolerance. What is your threshold for that's too much? You know, I have some communities that we work with where the threshold's real low. Like, one thing that they make a developer do extra outside of the box is too much. And you have to decide together what is your regulatory tolerance. And I said at lunch today that you are not a beggar community anymore. Not that you ever have been. You know, your median household income affords you the luxury of not having to just take every project that comes to Blythewood and say, yes, rubber stamp, approved. We're so thankful that you decided to grace us with your presence. That is not who you are. You're not competing with anyone in this market in that way. You are uniquely positioned in a beautiful geographic area outside of a thriving city, but you have definitely your own identity. You know, Greenville, Spartanburg, Greer, where I am from, has this problem where, like Greenville, the favorite child, you know, Greer, the baby, Spartanburg, the poor middle child. They don't know what to do with themselves. Well, finally, like 15 years ago, they got some administrators and some city officials that realized they don't have to compete with Greenville. They need to find their own place, their own identity, and they started to thrive and grow as a community. I think you've already figured that out for yourselves here, so you're not struggling with your identity. We just want to enhance what that is. But think about your regulatory tolerance. When you make decisions, when we make decisions about this code, are you thinking, I know they're going to ask for a variance for this, and we'll just approve it. If that's the case, then that's too much, and we need to come down a little bit. Things I might suggest might be too much, and that's okay. Just have to let us know. Okay, hot topics. Community design. Buildings, streets, pavements, sidewalks, shared paths, green space. These are the things that we're talking about that we can regulate that contribute to character. Housing types, lot sizes, location, choice, affordability. Overlay districts, you know, we talk about, do we need an overlay here? Or can we put an overlay on this? Well, maybe we should just hard code, meaning write that into the ordinance because it's good for over here, it's good for over here, it's good for over here. Traditional neighborhood developments versus conditional zoning. Do we want to have a lot of uses that might be okay if they had A, B, C, and D attached to them? And those would be conditional uses, and those are widely used in South Carolina, and that's okay. Parking. Do you have adequate parking? Is there places where there's too much parking, where you could cut some of that down and create some value in those areas? And then think about COVID-19 impacts on your businesses. We have a lot of businesses that have adjusted business models. There's a lot more maybe park and go. You've got all these new takeout business, on-street dining that became thriving during that area. And we need to think about things that COVID has taught us of how maybe we need to be flexible when there are things that may come again like that to allow businesses to be still robust and thriving during a changed economy. So in this picture, this is an extreme example, but you can see a subdivision up top. Your ordinance would not allow that specifically, but that is what you have in many cases. It's a neighborhood dedicated to cars. You don't see people, even though there's sidewalks on both sides of the street, there's no people out there. There's cars in the garage, there's a car parked in the street down the way. It doesn't look very attractive. No trees, except in the background. That's not somewhere that you want to live. It might be what some people can afford, but there's a better way to do that. And you can do that through ordinance design. But you have what's below, and that looks a little more attractive. There's still some imperfections in this picture, but you have more landscaping, Obviously, that's a more expensive housing product, but the houses could be the same size as what's above and have the same style and design. And you know, developers are the ones that are doing this to your community. There's, right here in Blythewood today, I took these pictures today. You can see the pollen in the road. The top one. That neighborhood is very similar to that, except for the fact that the houses are a little bit bigger and they're a little bit closer to the street, and there's only sidewalks on one side of the street. Your ordinance allows this. It just is under development right now. There's no trees in the front except for little tiny ones. They didn't preserve any trees. It's maybe a little bit more inviting than that picture, obviously, because again, I chose the most extreme example of a garage dedicated or car dedicated neighborhood I could find. But you're getting the same thing. Larger homes, and maybe this is what people think they want until you give them a different option. And maybe you can accomplish some of those same things through developments that you have. Now, granted, this neighborhood down below is obviously more mature, has mature trees, but there's land that they're going to start a development on that doesn't have to be completely clear-cut and graded and totally taken advantage of at the outset. But if your ordinance allows it, they're going to do it because it's much cheaper to develop that way. Commercial. I took a photo of this little commercial building, like right over there. Back there, we could see maybe this from that. And while that's maybe an old historic structure, and this, again, extreme example, it's being reused, so that's nice. You've got a good adaptive reuse, but there could be some things that could be done when you have an adaptive reuse project or when you have commercial to make things look a little bit more palatable with the community. So, not saying that you built that from the ground up and it looks bad. I'm just using this as an example of, that's an entrance into the town. Like, that's one of the first buildings when you cross the town limits that you see, and doesn't look very good. Not saying put these people out of business, but there is some opportunities there to create some adjustments. I would pick on your fire station also across the street a little bit. You've got an opportunity with maybe some new businesses coming to town that may want to invest in safety and infrastructure to improve those types of buildings. Make them showpieces. Other communities in South Carolina have done that. There's the new car wash. We went there today and the lady was like, "What are y'all doing? Taking pictures of my car wash?" She didn't see the giant Blythewood logo on the side evidently, but no, she was real sweet. And I find this to be a great development. You've got nice buffer yards from the road. I think I might have a picture of the sign. Yeah, there. You've got landscaping, a nice sign, a monument sign. You've got that nice, the curb, the gutter. Everything looks great about that. Back to this one. There's the fire station. I mean, if you didn't have like a fire truck sitting out front or the bay door rolled up, it doesn't look like a fire station necessarily. It's not something that if you were going to a municipal conference and everyone said, "Show me your fire station," you might not be proud to show them this picture. It doesn't mean the people that work inside of it are not amazing and that your staff is not wonderful, but when you redesign something and you have an opportunity to leverage other assets, you should make that look better. And design criteria can do that. There's the gym outside the school. That's a great example of a way that you're going to adaptively reuse a building that doesn't need any work done to it on the outside. The landscaping looks great. Everything looks wonderful about that. It's centrally located in the heart of your community, and it's going to give you a great opportunity to use that as a showpiece. All right. We talked about the subway today, and it looks different than it did maybe a couple times you've driven by it before because it was bright green, evidently. And you see the school in the background, so I can understand why they think it might be okay to paint it bright green, but you've got to write in hard code standards in that are outside of town center that are going to require that for all of your businesses. So when you do have that guy turn into pelican snowballs and paint that building hot pink, it could happen. It happened to me in my last community I worked in. And that was a fight with the Board of Architectural Review, who has such an important and a very difficult job of preserving a city's history. And in the city of Greer, Pelican Snowballs came in and bought a building right on the very edge of their National Register district. And we said, use National Registered Historic Victorian color palette. Well, hot pink's one of the colors. Whoever thought they'd paint the whole building that color? And sure enough, they did. That subway looks pretty good, by the way. It's not a bad-looking building. It's in a commercial area. If I had driven by that, would that green on the front have offended me? No. As a planner, I wouldn't have been like, whew. But I do understand the concept of what you're going for. You have a really robust already sign ordinance requiring low-style signage. You're ahead of the game in that regard. It won't be too much if we add some more restrictions in that regard for people to understand. You have an upcoming Main Street, South Carolina project on McNulty. Well, there's an example. That's you see some palm trees, so you're not going to plant palm trees, maybe palmetto trees, but, a more acceptable plant. But this is an example of how that can go. You've got some on-street parking, a median. It's like a road diet, if you will. You may not have the width that they have there, but just to look at the difference of what you can think about how more attractive that is for people to want to walk and be in that space and not use it as a cut-through or act like it's an alleyway just to whip around and avoid some traffic on Blythewood Road. And the elementary school is right there behind this. There's a lot of opportunity. If you're going to get a grant from Main Street, to do a project, you've got a lot of potential for that streetscape to be something amazing and create a third space. This is wonderful. The park is beautiful. You have a wonderful first space. You then have to go through traffic to get to this second space or third space, and this can be really amazing. So definitely take advantage of that. There's my pollen picture. Sorry about that. But I definitely wanted to pick on an issue with traffic. So there's Zaxby's. I'm in the Taco Bell parking lot right there, and you can see where we're sitting. We were not going to Taco Bell, but if the drive-thru was that backed up at Taco Bell, which it might be, it's a new restaurant, people want to go there. They need their gordita crunch. And they're like, I can't wait this long. Well, they want to go to Zaxby's, which has no line. They see one car at the window. Well, can you go to Zaxby's from Taco Bell? Nope. You got to go all the way around and get back on the road, the main road, wait for traffic to zoom, 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 zoom. Let's say it's 4:45 on Friday. You're backed up on the interstate, can't even get out. No one's let you out. They've been waiting for 15 minutes to get where they're going. They're not going to let anybody out. They're angry. So connectivity, we have to think about that. And that fence is backing up to the senior living facility with the grocery store right beside it and a physical therapy office. But those people can't walk across there or drive across. There's a fence. There's no connectivity. That is something that can definitely alleviate traffic congestion in your community if you require it, and there are stub outs. I saw the senior center had a stub out to Taco Bell, but there was a fence, so that was obviously not accomplished. Those are easy fixes that you can require, and they're very commonplace. Developers will have no issue. They may not want to connect to that restaurant or those people, but you get what you get when you have what you have. So demand better and you get better. Hot topic, Scout, motors. There's the outline. I want to talk about a project of regional impact. I come from Greenville, Greer, BMW. Project of regional lifetime impact. That's what you're going to have here with Scout Motors. What a blessing. Utilize that asset. They're going to do what they need to do to take care of themselves. We talked about traffic and how they're going to be concerned about traffic and whatnot, and they're going to get their people to work on time. That's going to be their number one priority. Don't have people late. And they'll adjust their shift differentials if they need to. They won't be having people coming down Blythewood Road at 5:30 to get to work. They'll do it at 6:15 when there's less people there. But how is this going to impact Ashley Oaks? Is that the name of it? Mm-hmm. Okay, up there. We drove through there. There's some riparian buffer waterways through there, but are the regulations strict enough from the county's point of view or from the Corps to protect that subdivision? Is it enough? You've got a phase, it's a dirt phase right there, but it's connected to it. What is the impact going to be if that's where those buildings are and that's where the parking is? Now, manufacturing of automobiles is pretty clean. You're not talking about putting in a coal-fired power plant here. But you still don't want to have a significant impact on your residents that are already expecting a certain and living a certain quality of life and investing in one. So make sure, and they're gonna. This is a huge, huge deal. I know it's just been kicked off, and Kirk's already got millions of phone calls wanting to see that site plan, probably for some people that live right there next to it. And all that will come with time. But just make sure that you guys are, I know it's exciting, and it's going to be wonderful, and they're going to get what they need to get approved. But you also want to make sure that your community outside of that is protected, and also leverage the asset for future economic development. Like, where are their parts manufacturers going to locate? Really close by, maybe on the other side of the interstate, and they'll drive over and get, what they need. Where are those people going to live? Are those executives going to live in Columbia? No, they're going to live in Blythewood. Because when their wives came here to visit, they liked what they saw in your community, and that's why they chose first South Carolina, and then second, they chose your community because of where it's located, what they saw here, the people, the assets, what things financially they were offered. But we say boardroom decisions are really made in the bedroom, because if the wife doesn't want to move here, they're not coming. So be thankful. You have shown Scout Motors that you can support their community with your education, with your workforce, with your housing, and these will be high-paying, top-collar jobs, white-collar jobs. And so you've got a lot of expectations to uphold with them. I think you can meet them. From what we've seen today, you're definitely there. So don't put up with stuff that doesn't meet the expectations of, think like Scout Motors executives when you're making land use decisions. Is this okay? Is this okay? Again, we want to respect the hard work that's already been done. You've done a lot. The Planning Commission has done a great job. I've looked at some of your past decisions. Council, you've been really proactive in your economic development thinking. It's great. You're doing a really great job. So we're not here to tear down things that you've done in the past. We're just here to build trust in each other, and you're already at the same table, so that's wonderful. But also make sure the community knows that they have more common values than differences. So when you're talking about that connectivity, and people may say, well, we don't want our subdivision to connect to this subdivision or that type of subdivision or townhouses. Well, it's really, you have a lot more commonality than you do differences, and you're all concerned about traffic, so let's alleviate this in a pattern together. Stakeholders that we're going to interview Wednesday, Thursday, they want to know that their input is being heard. So we will take notes, and it won't be like one comment attributed to one person. It will be the developer said, you'll have a list. And if they've said it to you a bunch of times, you're probably going to be able to pick out who said what. But it'll be a collective, private conversation that I have with them. Now, if they're all on there, they can all listen to each other talk. It'll be a Zoom call, so we'll know who said what. But it'll be a really good opportunity for them to have a frank conversation with me about Blythewood. And then we're going to take what they say and we're going to put those into practice in our work products. We're going to cross-check. What did we hear from stakeholders? What do we hear from you? What do we hear from citizens? So that we make sure we keep our perspective balanced. Okay, so how will it be organized? We typically organize our ordinances, and the annexation policy will be just slightly different from this, but I'm just going over what's real complicated, which is the ordinance. And to casual users, so you'll have, what's my property zoned? Is it, XYZ, what kind of building is permitted there? What are my uses? How much can I build? Then you'll go into more engineering type things like what are the site design standards? What are steps in the process? From whom do I receive approval? How are things measured, defined? And that'll be how it's outlined. Again, we're going to align with the comp plan and other policy documents like that ULI document. Preserve and enhance character rather than over-regulating. I think people get scared when you have like a consultant come in that they're going to throw all these extra regulations at you. No, we need to simplify regulations to make sure that it's easy to do business here. And also that you maintain a quality of life for residents that have already invested their, family's future here. We want to streamline procedures and be flexible in that regard, but have best practices put into place. Like I said, we've worked in 200 communities writing zoning ordinances. Well, we want to make sure we take the best of those to bring to you as options. With our outcomes, we will realize character and form. That's talking about how a business looks and behaves versus specifically what it is zoned. So you don't need all those zoning districts if you can condense those into a character district that accomplishes the same goals of 5 districts into maybe 1 or 2. And And that will increase predictability and certainty. So you've got a developer, for example, coming in with a new subdivision, and they want higher density than what's allowed in that zone right now. What would you have to do? Go through a rezoning process. However, if they were to come in a character district, they would have the option maybe of 3 different choices. If they were to preserve 50% open space, that's a little extreme, they would get 4 times the density. If they were to preserve 25%, they'd get double the density. If they were preserve 10, they'd get 1.5. And that is meaningful open space. Again, not pine trees in the corner, not the retention pond, not the sidewalks. I'm talking about real open space. And if they're close enough to things that you're already investing in as a community, like this park, like maybe that main street, if there's some kind of linear park in the middle, they may be exempt from open space requirements because they've already invested their tax dollars in the park, for example. They can walk and use the park's open space. They don't have to have all this private open space in their community. But the further you go from a public facility like that, and you give up yard space and you put a 3,000 square foot lot on or a 3,000 square foot house on a 6,000 square foot lot, those people have no yard. And then they gotta go somewhere to recreate, and that's important for our psyche and well-being, and everyone knows that. So we're gonna make sure that we have some open space preservation for people to gather in their communities, and it's not just in areas that are inaccessible to the neighbors. And that means we're gonna incentivize good development. If you're gonna do something like that, you're gonna get some density bonuses. And again, what's that regulatory tolerance for what that's gonna look like? And we'll show you a little bit more about that. This is our timeline. Someone asked me earlier today, how long is this gonna take? We have a 12-month timeline. That's pretty aggressive, but you have some aggressive things happening in Blythewood, and you need this to be done so you don't have to wait, or you don't tell people, oh, just wait till it's over before you apply, or you don't tell Scout Motors, wait till it's over, because they're not gonna wait. We've got to get these things accomplished so that way you're ready to go when the next supplier or the housing boom begins, or you have a tiny home community you want to come in to support some of that workforce housing. This is how we do it. We start with an orientation and diagnostic, and that's what we're doing now. I've been reviewing your plans, ordinances. Carol's pointed out things to me that I need to make sure I look at. We did field reconnaissance today. We'll be doing interviews this week. May have follow-up interviews based upon how those turn out. I have groups that sometimes I'm like pulling information out of them, and others that one person doesn't shut up for an hour, and I need the rest of them to continue to talk, so we reschedule another session with people that were, I have my way of making sure everyone's involved, but sometimes discussions just are really robust and we need to keep going. And then we will prepare in about a month an ordinance diagnostic and annotated outline. And if you see back on our schedule, you see that it says month 2 to 3. That's kind of when we like to get it approved. And that is basically a draft of where we're going from where we've been. So taking your chapters that we're reviewing, taking your annexation policy, and making a guideline and an outline and a plan. So that way everyone's on the same page. We agree, everything looks good, this is where we're going, this is what we've heard, and this is how we're moving forward. Before we start using money that you've invested in this project, to start writing. I'm not going to just go right in my office and say, here you go, what do you think? Without your input. And we do that in modules. So you can see the modules over on the side. Kind of the first section is that basic information. Where's my zoning? What am I allowed to do? What are my uses? Then you get into those power user things like how many parking spaces? What's the landscaping requirements? Those are when people are seriously starting to get into development. Then we'll do drafting. We'll set the ENCODE website up. You remember Harrisburg's from the beginning. And you'll have your own with style just for Blythewood. We'll draft in those modules. We'll do presentations and discussions of each of these sections. And we'll see how it goes on module 1. If it's too much, if it's 75, 100 pages and it's too much for y'all to review, we'll go with a smaller chunk and we'll do it in more than 2 modules. That happens sometimes. I have a client right now that they need it every month, little pieces, 30 pages. That's all they can handle. They are getting 28 rezonings a month. They don't have time. Their staff doesn't have time to read what I write, let alone drink from a fire hose with all the rest of the work they have going on. So we want to be as respectful of your time as possible. But that timeline with 12 months does require your staff and you guys to review things as I send them, which sometimes makes projects extend, but you only know how busy you are and how much you can handle. Public review and comment, that will come after the delivery of the annexation. I said UDO modules, but it'll be the zoning and subdivision modules. Then we'll have a joint work session just like this, where we come back together and we'll start a public comment period. Now, the public will have an opportunity at all those other meetings that we present these things along the way to listen and be a part and share in their discussion and comment on the website, but that'll be the official legal required. And South Carolina is real relaxed in what they require for zoning review. Planning Commission has to review it. You have to have a public hearing and then it can be adopted. So we could do this completely with no public input, but that's not what we want to do. And then we'll do the official public hearings, which is required by law, and then publish the ordinance. Your annexation policy will just need to be reviewed, adopted by your Planning Commission and council as a policy, but it's not carrying the weight of law necessarily unless you take things out of that ordinance and make them, you know, a codified practice in your community. Okay, so we have a lot to do at the beginning. We're here at the top, very first line of my upside down pyramid. I did the kickoff call. We're doing the intro presentation tonight. We'll do the stakeholder interviews Wednesday and Thursday. And then I have been reviewing documents all along to get prepared for this meeting, prepared for our tour today, prepared for my sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, and then I'll write the annotated outline. That outline will keep me on track. So when you're looking at a document and I'm saying, okay, this is section 1.2.3, you're like, well, where'd that come from? Because we already have this. Yeah, it came from chapter 4.1, and you'll see on that outline where every old section goes into new sections. So you're not confused and lost about where things are. And what we will do is import old language into ENCODE, which I don't want to go way back up to the top, but remember that yellow and gray screen with the comments on the side? In the middle, it'll be stricken and underlined, and we'll track all the changes that we make to the existing language. And there'll be a lot that we just cross out completely because that section isn't working. And you'll see how those changes go together, and it makes it really easy for staff to say, well, we really do, this works fine for us, let's keep this, and then let's add something new here. That's what I mean by collaborative drafting. We are not just over here in our planning theory silo. We're communicating with you, communicating with staff to make sure that we're on the same page as we move forward. Because we can waste money in a minute if we don't ask you your opinion. I can go write the whole ordinance and bring it back in 4 months and say, what do you think? Well, that's not what we want. Well, then I didn't do my job. And then we'll deliver those ordinances in modules. Again, we'll see how that goes. I plan for 2. It could be 6. Sometimes that happens, and we are flexible in that regard. We'll have public open houses, and those will be reflective of things that we hear in those stakeholder interviews. A lot of times people don't come to the public open house. You don't put like a zoning or rezoning sign in their front yard or automotive manufacturing plant in their backyard. They don't care what y'all are doing up here at town hall. They're not coming up here asking questions. We want to make sure that people understand, and your development community and business owners that are going to be affected by these changes understand what we're after. And that's where you come in. If you appreciate the process and are participating in the process, you'll be able to educate others on the process. And I say appreciate and participate because I don't mean you're going to like and love everything. There's, how many people in here, plus some missing. Everyone's going to have a different opinion about different things, but that's why this is going to be a collective process where we all decide together. Then we'll do a public hearing draft. That'll be reflective of all the changes from all the modules. And then hopefully we will adopt it, and then we'll be done. So, Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to have a visioning exercise. It's not like the comp plan where I say, what do you love about Blythewood? We already know everybody loves about it. We read that in the comp plan. So we're going to talk about things like what uses, and you can answer back, what uses in your community are bad? What do you see on your commercial corridors that look bad? And this is why it's good to have those as, you don't have to say anything tonight. If you're not comfortable, that's okay. And that's why we don't record those meetings Wednesday and Thursday. Carol's not on those meetings Wednesday and Thursday. So those groups feel comfortable, frankly, talking to me as a consultant, and I'll make sure I explain all this at the outset. And on a Zoom call, you can tell if you're being recorded or not, and they'll see that they're not being recorded. And I will make notes, and they'll hear me typing. Actually, I'll share my screen where they can see what I'm typing. And it will not say, John Smith said he hates the mayor. It won't say that. It'll say, John Smith said development is difficult at town hall because it takes 10 months to get something reviewed. That's not true, we know. But those are the kind of things I want people to feel comfortable sharing with me. Or I don't like this business because, or this could be better if. Those are the things we want people to share with us. So that's what we're going to talk about with them. I have a preset list of questions, and sometimes people don't talk. They're like looking at their phone, typing over here. Well, if that happens, we have some segue questions and hot topics that we'll bring up to get people really engaged in talking. And sometimes I do have to go back to those softballs. What do you like about living in Blythewood? Why did you move there? You know, things if they're not really engaging. And those can be valuable because then people will get their juices flowing and they'll start thinking about things they really want to talk about. It's not meant to be a gripe session. We are just trying to pinpoint specific things in the ordinance that can help us target and how we can make improvements and make changes. Like I might ask them, what do you think about McNulty Road? Is that a corridor that you would feel comfortable walking on? Would you walk from Subway, you know, to whatever's on the corner? Would you feel like you might get hit by a truck if you tried to cross the middle of the street? We saw trucks cutting through there today. That's not what the design of that road is for. So we got to think about things like that. So those are the kind of questions I'm going to ask them. So do y'all want to talk about that at all? What uses in your community do you feel let's talk about positives. What is great to you here? What do you think looks good? What subdivisions do you feel are models? Or if you don't have an answer for Blythewood specifically, where in other communities have you gone that you feel, I wish that street looked like this. I wish our town had X from other places. Like what are your comparison communities in your mind that you go to mentally? I mean, obviously I told you Spartanburg goes to Greenville and Greer and says, are we better than them at this and that? And I work in Florence. They want to compare themselves to nowhere, but we compare to Darlington and Myrtle Beach when we talk about, you know, in their geography. So what are places that you think about in that regard of what's good, what's bad, if you don't want to talk about Blythewood tonight? Hey. Sure. Okay. Sure. Some are 20, but they haven't all RSVP'd, so it might end up being 5. We have a list, Ken and Keith, that we like to, groups that we specifically target that usually have a lot to say. HOAs, that's one group. Like it can be the president's representatives from the HOA, so I didn't invite them because I don't know who they are. Carol invited them because they're going to recognize him and his email and coming from Blythewood.sc, whatever. And for example, and he invites them to the meeting. I introduce the meeting and we start chatting about things that are relevant to HOAs. Like, what's your process for approving something if something comes to you and you know that it needs to be reviewed by the town? Do you tell them to go to the town or do you just approve it and let them? Mm-hmm. Sure. Right. I haven't seen that yet, but I'll make sure that I get a hold of that.
And that was all done as a precursor to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So it was all kind of wrapped in there, but I'll give you the
Sure.
survey data for that too.
Okay, it's good to know because sometimes people get talking about that. Those are a lot easier exercises. They're real theoretical. But to fully answer your question, I just use HOAs as one group. Not every person I talk to Wednesday and Thursday will be a resident because you have people that do business here that don't live in your community. And I'll ask those types of groups, like the developers, the engineers, What's easy to do about doing business in Blythewood from your perspective versus the city of Columbia, Richland County? These are where I'm hinting and getting at why they would not annex. Why would they not recommend their client annex? Because that's where the decisions are made with those engineers, those developers. They're like, I hate Blythewood. I'm never working there again. Well, that gets out, and their clients don't want to come here. That happened to Spartanburg, city of Spartanburg. Took like forever and ever and ever to get anything reviewed. So no one would annex into Spartanburg because they didn't want to be in their town because they knew that it would take, like, time is money in development. They didn't want to go through the process. If Richland County is approving a subdivision in 5 months and you're taking 20, I mean, they don't care if you're going to give them 5 more lots because they're going to lose 15 times that amount of money in that waiting period. So those are the things we're trying to target. And it might be just the opposite. They might not know about the potential and benefits of annexation here. So that's a group that we get a lot out of, and usually I end up having 2 or 3 of them I have to continue with in a future date. There'll be some business owners. They usually have a lot to say. And those are great groups to talk to, but I asked for specific types of people, not necessarily specific people, because I don't know who they are yet. Yes, sir. Sure. Yep. Yep. And it's different for every geographic that we work in. It can be different from here to Columbia because of the cost of land. So when we hear a lot of good data from these first interviews, you know, we're not catering to developers, but we may have sections, subdivision sections, that we cross-check with the engineers and say, does this work on a lot yield? Will your developer still invest in this community with this ordinance? And they'll say, yes, but that's going to cost us $5,000 more per lot. And council might say, we don't care. That's what you're doing in order to build in Blythewood. And your community is so attractive and your cost of living is relatively low for your income that you still have that ability. And there's got to be a place that we don't cross over that tipping point where we can't do anything here because it takes too long or it's too difficult or it's too expensive. And you've got a competing community or the county right next door that can embrace those issues easier. So you're right, there is a difficult point in that. Where is that point? We don't know yet. We have to see what we can come up with, and we'll, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, you just have higher expectations. Mm-hmm. But you can't have them too high where they won't invest. Right, right. So it's not pie in the sky silo ordinance writing, it's cross-checking and getting your community and saying, can we go a little further? Can we push it a little past where we are now? We're not going to totally reinvent the wheel here, but giving flexibility, I think, is developers, number one, they'll say, I just want consistency in your review. Like, don't tell me one thing one day and tell me something else the next week. I can't do my business that way. Be consistent. Don't be too hard, meaning don't ask for things that I know that my buyer cannot afford. You know, if you say you can't have any vinyl siding in Blythewood, well, that might be unaffordable for some of the types of housing that you need. But those are the types of decisions that we have to make. It will be, yes. Kurt can email it to y'all. He might save it as a PDF. It's on the laptop there. Do you want to do that? Or you want me to email you a PDF tomorrow? Either way, he can send it out. Sure. And I will send you a synopsis of the comments, or Carol will send you a synopsis. I won't communicate with you directly, specifically, but I'll send him a synopsis of all the comments from Wednesday and Thursday, and then you'll see those and we can follow up on, like, if you see something that you're like, oh, I really need to know more about that, we'll be glad to, I'll have personal notes of who said what, but it won't be in the collective notes. Sure. Right. Okay. Sure. Okay. That's a great point. I'm a military brat myself and grew up living on or around bases, and there's certainly an important player in all aspects of planning. You know, you may have officers and whatnot living in Blythewood. I don't think your younger airmen can afford to live here, but they certainly can be a part of your community, and it is important.
Yep.
Carol?
Can you describe the whole process that you did? I think Ms. Page asked in the beginning, we kind of washed over it. But.
Yeah, so Kelly gave me all the topics. So homeowners and average residents, property owners and business owners was another one. Planners in the surrounding area, whether it be DOT or the county. Some of the others.
School teachers.
We did not have school teachers. I don't
We had
believe.
school district.
Yeah, I have the school district
We'll have
on there. I have the planner
representative from the
from District 2 there.
Yes.
Yep, so I have Richland on there, but that's good. I need to add a Fairfield County planner too.
Doug Pauly works right here in Blythewood, the chairman of the Fairfield County Council.
Right.
Would probably be a good one.
And if we want to add, like,
Yeah.
you brought up a great point, you know, maybe that we haven't considered because of not direct inside the community, but that's a really good idea. So if you can think of people that would volunteer an hour of their time to talk to me about that, share those with Carol, school teacher. I mean, the district representative is going to say something a lot different than a teacher. So, but sometimes a teacher, that's hard. If you have some, they're hard, that's hard for them to be honest and frank about living here. They might not can afford to live in Blythewood. You have a lot of communities where the police chief cannot afford to live in the town. We don't want to get to a place where it's like that here. I have a client in Black Mountain, North Carolina, where their planning commission says they don't care if any of their public employees can live in their community. They're the Aspen of North Carolina. You know, but their entire planning commission doesn't feel that way. Their staff doesn't feel that way. But none of their staff does live there because they're priced out of a very geographically constrained area. So you decide what you want to be, and we want to make sure we include everyone for sure.
I have the school district.
Whether or not they show up, that's something different.
He did accept.
That's a hard one. He did?
Yep.
Great. Well, we'll see if he talks.
Yeah, if you have some recommendations. Yeah, well, I had like cultural, yep. So I had the Historical Society and Camp Discovery and then tourism groups. What's that? You know, I did not have Big Red Barn, so. Yep.
And sometimes we like to ask if like pastors or the faith-based community can participate, because they can do a great deal of getting the word out about things from the pulpit. Maybe not saying the town's doing this project, or maybe they can and say, make sure you pay attention to what's going on because this might affect you. They're trusted people, so.
Did you send the invites out yet, Carol?
I have, but I can still send it.
We can also add more, like in coming weeks.
Yeah, we can add these.
We can help you. If you send all of us,
Yep, no, we had a shared spreadsheet that Malcolm helped me with.
Okay.
So he added as well, and so we kind of collaborated on that to get it all. But, Marty Wells added him, but if you have some other military, that you would like added in there as well, please send it to me, that you think would be good.
Carol or Kelly, either one, people you've invited total across both those sessions. But if you want to send us those people who have not responded,
Yeah.
just from a council planning commission,
That's a good idea.
know somebody that we have a personal connection with, it's important that we get people on these lines. I know our HOA, Malcolm, myself, we both live in
Okay.
Ashley Oaks. The mayor lives in a phase of Ashley Oaks. But our particular HOA sent it out.
Okay.
It's been talked about. I've talked to neighbors about it. I'm in construction, and I know builders are talking about it.
Good.
Blythewood is not their favorite place to build.
Okay.
Blythewood is constricted. You know, there aren't those huge tracts of land within Blythewood that a developer wants to claim and build. You drove, I could tell from your pictures, you drove most of those today.
Right.
You've seen most of those. You've seen the Abney Hills, the Ashley Oaks, the Blythewood Crossing, or Blythewood Farms, which isn't even in Blythewood. So our ordinance wouldn't even affect them. So I think we're unique in that, where other towns you go to have these large areas and tracts of land that are enticing to developers. We've pretty much exhausted that. And I'm not necessarily in a good way. Abney Hills 4 is the final phase there. And it's unbelievable. I don't know if you got to ride in Abney. It's unbelievable what that last phase will do. And it's already clear cut. It's already prepared to be built on.
Right.
We used to be able to say that was a local builder. That's a national builder now. That local builder was bought out, and it's a national builder. And they don't give 2 cents about Blythewood. They just don't. They say they want a partner, but that's a hard bar to hit when you see development.
Right.
And then the carrot for annexation is not, I mean, we're uniquely positioned there too. There's not a carrot. Some people view it as a bad thing to come into Blythewood.
Sure.
But what I tell businesses and residents all the time is if we don't annex you in Blythewood that currently has 0 millage, there's not an increase in tax you're going to face. But we're getting significant pressure from the south. That's the city of Columbia that is coming. And you would much rather be in Blythewood than the city of Columbia.
We say the same. We said the same thing in Greer because Greer had 99 mills, and if it sat still, we would annex you because you wanted sewer from CPW. You had to annex. There was a forced annexation there going on, but it's like an amoeba, spreading out with tentacles. Columbia's doing that.
And our other challenge is we are in intergovernmental agreements.
Yep.
We are not big enough. We have no millage. So when you talk about adding a police station to a town like Blythewood, the millage that we would get would not be sufficient
Right.
just to undergird a police station.
Right.
So education of our residents to me, because we are not a Forest Acres. We are not a Greer. Blythewood is unique in so many ways. It's educating those people. And a lot of people, people take their elections very seriously. You go to the polling place on election day and count the number of people that think they're Blythewood residents. That go to the polling place, drive to a polling place and try to vote. I stopped counting in my election, which was an off-cycle election, at 68. My hash marks were 68 individuals drove to vote because they thought they lived in a town they don't. That in and of itself to me is mind-blowing.
That is, and it's kind of sad.
So it's educating residents.
Not on the residents' part. It's sad that they don't, that you haven't
Really
annexed
sad on
them.
my point. I would have liked those.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Right. Okay. There are, looking at what is vacant, there's also a ton of opportunity for some infill development on smaller lots. We're not talking about we need 70 acres to do this giant development. Like you said, the days of that have gone by the wayside. You're getting to the built out, like how much is left. Then maybe retrofitting some different types of housing product within those smaller infill spaces. Those developers that would come in, even maybe some local builders, local developers, would want to utilize some unique tools. You may want more housing closer to this park. You may want to have some townhomes or some secondary living facilities for people like in their backyard for their elderly parents, or to rent out to their college-age son who's home in the basement. What is your tolerance for that? Do you want to be just large lot, single family? Do you want to have some other types of housing? And we'll hear some of those, and I'll ask those kinds of questions.
And did we utilize Blythewood chamber members?
I've reached out to several business owners. I'll send you the list. It was mainly ones in the downtown center area that participate, and a lot of those businesses are on there.
I think looking at the list of by tomorrow, who is RSVP'd?
I was going to send out reminders because we had a great list, but not many responded as of yet. And so just to keep it fresh on their radar, I was going to wait a little bit closer to hit them up again.
And maybe calling them like the night before, the day before, remind them.
I'll send you that list.
Say you specifically were invited. This isn't just some random 50 people. This is 10 people, and you're one of the 10. So we really need you to be on there.
I would encourage you to use Scout as a hook to get people on those calls.
I think that there's probably a lot more interest now than there was last week this time.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can make it sound like we're going to have some exciting thing to say. It is exciting. That matters, and that is a huge implication for the future. And we will ask them how they feel about it. They might not know much about it, but we can ask them what they think about it. How's this going to impact you?
Absolutely. And it may drive people to the call.
Sure. Say there's going to be some talk. There's going to be some scout talk. Hop on there.
That's right.
You might learn something. Wink, wink. No, honestly, your comprehensive plan is real fresh. So if you feel like it was good and you adopted it, which you did, it should not need amending yet. Now, sometimes we'll discover things that are Scout, that could have an impact on the comp plan. It's huge. We may need to amend the comp plan because you don't want to make zoning decisions at contrast with your future land use map. So we may find as we're narrowing the focus of the zoning districts that we've got to adjust some thinking in the comp plan, and that will be a process that you would have to go through to amend the comprehensive plan, and that takes longer than a zoning request. You have to advertise that for 30 days, and the planning commission has to review it, and then council will have to adopt it. 2 readings, but it can be done. It happens, but it's not often. Florence County, they just did a comprehensive plan, major rewrite. We did a whole new future land use map for them. And they rezoned 8,200 parcels as a result of that comp plan effort because they had donut holes all over the county that were surrounded by the city of Florence. Well, they were unzoned in those donut holes, and it was just like this business island, like a real estate office in the middle of all this residential, for example. Well, that didn't fit, but when the real estate office wanted to sell it to Bojangles, technically it's allowed, it's not zoned. But how does that fit with the community at that point? So they did a moratorium on development in Florence County until we fixed it. That happens sometimes. I don't think you're going to have that big of a problem because you're not full of donut holes. But that was a county, 800 square miles of mess, and we finally got it straight, but it took us 28 months. Yes. Yes. So typically, that's how I draft everything. And the staff will review in that software also. And once we have a module ready, we can push it out to everyone to look at. Y'all can comment. You won't be able to edit my work or their work, but you can comment. Or you may have a designated commenter, like send all the comments to so-and-so, because if everybody writes a comment and they're all at contrast, we're not gonna know what to change. We'll have to talk about that. In your next planning commission meeting, or tonight even, think about that in the next couple of days of how we'll do that. But yes, everyone will see everything. Yes, like after module 1 is complete and the edits have been made and everyone here is okay with it, we'll turn the live site on. Now the live site will be live in like 2 weeks with just pretty pictures and pay attention to the meeting schedule kind of stuff, a map. It won't have data, but when that's ready, we'll turn the comments on and there'll be a comment feed at the bottom of the page where everyone can see what everybody writes, but they won't be able to Twitter feed each other and go back and forth, if you will. Yes. Yep. Oh, 100%. If it turns into that, we'll just turn it off. I edit the comments. If people write mean stuff or use bad words, we just delete them. It's recorded. You guys can go in and we can see it in the back end, but I can hide people's comments. Yes, it takes a lot. It never really happens that way unless you have a real heated issue. If someone writes, I hate vape shops, for example, and then someone gets real mad about that, they might go back and forth about something. Or if someone says, there's all kinds of things that can come up. It's rare that people use that outlet for that because no one really, you have to really be seeking out the page to go look and find that. It's not like it's going on Blythewood's Facebook page if you have one. But we can definitely control the comments. And there have been times when we've had to turn off the visibility of public comments. You can still make them. And oh, their name is on the comment. Nothing's anonymous. Even when you make a comment, when I make a comment, when he makes a comment, everyone has their own unique identified login, even the public. Have to type their email address in order for it to post. That's a good thing for us to be able to answer back to them, like, what did you mean when you said this word is improperly defined? We can contact some people and ask them what they mean by that. I don't find citizens using the comment feature too often until we tell them to use it. Like, it's live, go look at the website, and then they'll start reading and making their comments. And rarely do we comment back on that to citizens. We just accept those and then we discuss what they've said and their changes and then we make them as a collective decision of what we're going to fix.
So when you have these sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, what's your optimum population? Because I see 60 people logging in there. You're not going to be able to hear from all them. It'll take 5 hours.
Like 10 people per hour is about all I can handle. Because I don't give every person an opportunity to answer every question. I say, if you've got something different to say that's constructively different than someone else's answer, then raise your hand, on Zoom or go like this, wave at me. I mute everybody so they're not talking over each other. If you have like less than 5, unless it's engineers, they don't have a lot to say. The conversation feeds off each other, and I call on people by name. I said, let's start with Mr. Smith. What do you think about this? And I explain how I'm going to run the meeting at the beginning, so that way they all know they're not going to get to say an answer to all 15 of my questions, as we'll never get through them. But sometimes someone answers one of my questions in their comments, and I can skip to the next. We've done this so many times through COVID that I love the Zoom format. It's a lot easier for people to log in. We're more respectful of people's time if they can do it from their home computer or their office computer and not have to drive over here if they work somewhere else, and get more attention and usually more attendance that way. But if there's 60 people on one invitation, we need to break that into more than 2, might need 2 or 3.
Yeah, I could try to keep it, 15 at the most.
Yeah, I saw one that had 16, but that's engineers and developers. If there's 16 that log on, I'll be shocked.
Yeah, a lot of those do not reply.
And if they're important and you know they have something to say or they're invested, then we need to make sure that we reach out to them separately. I mean, if you have people that are on the list or not on the list that definitely need to be part of this conversation, then tell me or tell Carol. You can't leave them out just because they didn't come to a meeting. They may have been sick or something and didn't know about it. I'm not gonna say, oh, did you not come to the meeting? Well, sorry, we didn't get your info. No, we wanna make sure we hear from everybody. Okay, well, I'm excited about Wednesday and Thursday and hearing from your community. Have a good idea of the questions I'm gonna ask them now that we have been here all day and seen and heard and talked to y'all. So thank you for hosting me today. It's good to be back. And I look forward to seeing y'all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Open citizen comments. Now, since we have this opportunity, do y'all have any questions about this VW Scout plant? I know it's fresh in I'll tell you the history of it in a second. I'm gonna send you, Carol, can you, if I email, or is it Kirk's email? Those two pictures I took?
Send it to Kirk Blythewood at gmail.com.
Kirk, what?
Kirk
Oh, I got you.
Blythewood.
Not Wilson K?
No, sir. No.
Say it one more time, Kirk.
Just Kirk, K-I-R-K, and then Blythewood at gmail.com.
That's it. You got a pointer? You got a laser pointer?
It wasn't working, Mayor.
Okay, about 6 months ago, we had a company come here, met with the county council leadership, pulled me into it, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Commerce, Governor. And they came and toured, and they're gonna build electric vehicle batteries. So we'll have to sign non-disclosure agreements. You deal with corporations like this. Really don't want that information to get out of the press and in the public, and then all of a sudden the company chooses to not sign, which is exactly what happened. And everybody's disappointed and frustrated. So this company came, they looked at Blythewood Industrial Park, and they looked at Florence, and then they chose Florence. A couple months after they came to us, so we're all disappointed. Then we had another company come, was gonna build solar panels, about half the industrial park. They came in, the first one I mentioned, the electric vehicle battery, was gonna take the entire footprint, just like this. The other one was about half of it, the solar panel. These were all under the green energy deal, and President Biden's administration is subsidizing, sending literally billions of dollars to companies to start green energy projects. So that company just really didn't make a decision, but in the meantime, Scout came. Scout, as many of you remember back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was a little vehicle like the old Bronco. You can take the top off, always one wants to get it.
Right. I remember them.
Oh, I thought they were cool in high school, you know. So, VW bought the Scout name. Scout stopped producing vehicles in 1980. And just as a side note, the worst thing about it was they didn't treat the bodies properly, so they rusted. They would fall apart in years because it was a bad vehicle. VW bought the Scout name, the brand. It's going to be a wholly owned subsidiary of Volkswagen. So I don't know if you're going to see the Volkswagen signs here or not, but Volkswagen is the manufacturer. So they came several months ago, again, the governor called me, Coach all these Ector County helicopters will go around. We're all the way out to Lake Murray, came back, looked out east, just looked at the whole area. Evidently, they were impressed with what they saw. So then they came back and said on Friday, which was 3 days ago, 4 days ago, they were going to meet at BWO headquarters in Durham with their entire board of directors and agency. So about noonish, phone rings, my wife comes running out, I'm in swim trunks, jumping in and out of the hot tub, the little house we're renting, my boy played baseball in Georgetown this weekend, so we're all down there with some other families. My wife comes running out, phone call, it's the governor. So we got the phone, it was his aide, and he said, hey, sir, I'm calling the governor. So he says, congratulations, they chose Blackwood. Look forward to working with you all. We're gonna get this out of the public eye as quickly as possible, answer any questions, so on and so forth. Then they sent some of these pictures out. This is a view, like, almost like we're in a helicopter over at Town Hall. This is Blythewood High School, Highway 21 here, where it splits at 555. This is I-77, that's exit 24 there. This is exit 27 Blythewood Road. You got Food Line, Cobblestone, Cern Mill where the light is. They're gonna extend the road there, connect it, it goes all the way up past Motor Road, Middle, and Fairfield Electric. It goes on around, turns on Fulmer Road, over, and then the dirt spot at the very top is the final phase of actually Oaks. Those are the major things. The current industrial park down Community Road is still there, there's Tokyo and all the rest. So what's really significant here is, the number one concern I have, and echo from all the citizens that talk to me and you all, is traffic.
Absolutely.
We know the Blythewood Road expansion is been bid, and I think it's been awarded, they're gonna start working on expanding that road, that's separate and distinct. So Volkswagen, or Scout, I should say, you can see traffic circle, they're gonna expand Community Road in Black for obvious reasons, but the big kicker here for traffic is you see another interchange in the middle. So they're building an entire new interchange, so it's 24, probably 25, and 27. Well, it also has public access. So you have Ramadan Road, turn there, you can get it from Community Road coming up, or you can get it from Black Road coming down. So that's gonna assist in alleviating traffic, a couple of traffic circles around that, to keep traffic flowing. Traffic circle up here, we already have planned. 4,000 employees, 600 of which will be expatriates, they call them, German citizens who come here on visas to work. Those are their proprietary trademark engineers, all the rest. And I've been assured by their leadership, they will hire local firms. Blythewood, Bristol County, Fairfield County, the state, before they look to go outside the borders. So we're looking at about 3,400 jobs, all the new road infrastructure, they have a lot of green space, there's buffers, you really can't tell from this rendition, but big buffers between the communities, the neighborhoods, access points all around. And another key here, you got the railroad that runs down 21 here. They're gonna put a spur, and it's gonna have its own crossing across the street. And it goes over, there's a rail yard in the back, vehicles come off the manufacturing plant, goes on the rail cars, rail cars come around, they either go north, or they go south of Charleston.
Now, where's the railroad? Is the railroad track, because it doesn't cross 77?
Right up there, okay, so here's the railroad, and this is Romer Pond Road.
Right.
Right here, they're gonna spur it off,
Okay.
and you follow that little line, and it crosses I-77 with its own bridge up there, you see it? North of the, south of the interchange.
South of the interchange.
Yeah, this is north, this is south.
Yeah, so it'll be south of the interchange.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
whose water infrastructure will they be tapped into? Yes.
That's a good question. I know we're fed by both Winsboro and Columbia. I would assume, because we all have Columbia water, as you know, and everyone in that immediate area. We have sewer from, what's the company's name?
Yeah.
Utilities, and water from, I'm assuming it would come from.
Okay,
I
'cause
posed that
Because I
question.
think Columbia has a waterway down Locklear Road there, that area. Okay.
I posed that question, Mr. Mayor, directly to Jeff Rubel, and it is Columbia. And Columbia has the capacity, more than enough.
Jeff Rubel, if you don't know, he's the director of Bristol County Economic Development. He's the one that's been working this for over a year now. Big infrastructure improvements, new access road, new
Yes, sir.
I believe they're gonna hold that off, for subsidiary companies, ancillary companies that make their products. If you look at the BMW project and the Volvo project in Charleston, the BMW project on this part right there. So they didn't just come, they came, and 12 other industries come out, make the parts and bring the pieces that they need to. So it'll grow. We obviously, as Paige said before, we're pretty much full at the end in Blythewood. We don't have any large tracts of land. I know there's one between Mr. Damon's property, which one I'm not gonna answer for him, but there's one there. But Fairfield County is rich with open space. They even have an industrial park there on Beach Road. So I'm not gonna make it a planning for them. I'm just saying there's opportunities, especially areas that are rich for growth like Fairfield County. So if you go to the next. This is looking at it from, if you were over Ashley Oaks, the helicopter looking back. So there's town hall at the very top, in the middle there is, town hall right at the road, comes across, comes through this long road, comes on down, Fulmer Road is about right here. So it's just another, and there's the rail line, rail spur, there's the interchange. So exit 24 is off the map, exit 27 is at the top. So we're facing northeast right now.
Let's basically take off all the 1,300 acres.
They took everything we had, when I say we, the county, and they expanded on that side too. So what is it, 2,000, roughly 1,800 acres of it total. We had 1,350 available. So they got that under a little bit.
Isn't that pretty much comprehensive size of all?
I think Volvo is much larger as far as that whole entire, what's it called, hall, Camp Hall. I thought that was, I mean, that's got, but it's, I mean, it's, I think that might be larger, but it's comparable in size, I mean.
More to follow on that, but I think they're.
I think groundbreaking is gonna be the.
I think it's like March 20th. Do you want to tell me about the town hall meeting?
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. So the Secretary of Commerce wants to start briefing the public right away. So this is gonna come out, we just found out today. He's bringing a team, next Monday night here at 6 p.m. I know it's short notice, but we've asked, let's have a lot more, just don't do one. Because some people won't be able to attend on such short
Could be.
notice. They wanna get it out in public, they wanna start entertaining questions, and they wanna do it on a regular basis, because this project is gonna move pretty quick. The governor resourced it, executive order to start bringing more green energy companies to the state of South Carolina. Red, recently, the BMW is coming up with a new electric vehicle, I'm sure we'll build, and Scout. I do have a picture of it here. I could probably Google it real quick.
I'm just going to mention a few things, Mayor.
New Scout vehicle, and it'll pop up. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention a couple things directly related to the planning commission because of your role in this. There is one property that would have to be rezoned for it to be part of this to the light industrial 2, which is the same, which is on that south side. And so that will be coming to the planning commission, I would think, the 1st of April. And then it gets 2 readings of town council. And then the second thing is in our ordinance, any industrial development requires planning commission approval of the site plan. So they would submit that and come to y'all for approval.
The one with both vehicles on it, Kurt, the black or blue. The vehicle at the bottom is the initial vehicle they're gonna produce. It's the Scout 100% electric vehicle. And then if it takes off and they tried to focus on pickup trucks for the American market. As soon as that one takes off like they anticipate, they're gonna start producing the SUV in addition to it, the one up top. Again, 100% electric, SUV and pickup. So, go back to that old Scout. I like seeing that again. You can see where it came from if you're not familiar. The white one up there, the white one. Yeah, anyone, oh, that's kind of the, I don't like that one. I like the white one, yeah.
That's the one I remember.
That was the original Scout. You had, you could put soft top on it, hard top on it, like the old Blazer.
Surely they will have some of those in their like
I hope so.
office.
I'm sure
you
they
can look
will.
at and visit.
But I went on like autos.com just to see. You can find them. They're $49,000 because they're so rare. You can go on Auto Trader. That was it, Auto Trader. But they rusted so badly, they just didn't last. They stopped production in 1980. Anyway, just a cool little vehicle for high school.
Mayor, I think you heard, and I'm sure y'all have all been up to 85 and seen BMW, just for size comparison reference, so you can think about the impact. It has 10 million square feet under roof and is 10,000 employees. They draw from 20 counties for employment. They have 48 shift differentials, depending upon what they're building, how fast it needs to go, whether the port's moving quick enough, and you have the batteries, Peace of Mind, and Kings Mountain, maybe Florence, and it's a just-in-time manufacturing, like you said, the trickle-down effect with all the companies that will have to be right here in Blythewood, so those trucks can just be right there, is gonna be amazing. It's such a blessing.
And I was speaking to the mayor earlier, it's amazing to me how fast the name Volkswagen and the name Scout is moving. I'm one of the principals in an industrial park further down 77, closer to 277 in Faro Road. And I fielded 6 German calls about tier 1 suppliers. It's amazing to me that in a matter of days, they know where property is available, what's being developed, what's not being developed, what's under contract, and are actively reaching out. It's mind-blowing. I mean, they are not gonna waste time, at least it doesn't feel initially that they're gonna waste any time at all.
Very good. Yeah. A real big deal. Yeah.
So that's all I know from my side, my opinion. My comments do not come from Volkswagen, let me put that disclaimer out there, or Scout Vehicles Incorporated, or what, Scout Motors. They're just my own personal observations. But since it all came out public, the governor called me, he said everything's public. And I believe the state paper just today, just this afternoon, has some pictures and some more comments. So I just,
Interesting, WIS is reporting today and this afternoon that they have the old Richland County Economic Development Park with all the individual sites, which is the background for their report, and I'm just thinking, that's not right.
All right. Yeah, yeah.
any other open citizen comments? Mr. Chairman?
Okay, that being said, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're good to go. Thank you, everybody.